ever noticed something strange about Japanese classrooms? Not the uniforms, not the silence, the focus. Kids sitting calmly, paying attention, finishing tasks without constant reminders. And what's even stranger, many of them do it without looking stressed. Meanwhile, most people today can barely focus for 5 minutes without checking their phone. So, what's going on? What is happening in Japan that isn't happening everywhere else? It's not stricter rules. It's not fear. It's not even better teachers. It's one habit. A habit so small it sounds almost too simple to be real. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why it works and how to use it with your own child starting tonight. The habit has a name. The Japanese call it the 5-minute rule, and it connects to something much deeper, a philosophy that rebuilt an entire nation from the ground up after World War II, a philosophy called Kaizen. But before we get to that, I need to tell you something about focus that most parenting books completely miss. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Your child is not unfocused because they're lazy. They're not unfocused because they have a short attention span. They're unfocused because starting feels hard, and nobody ever taught them what to do about that feeling. Think about the last time you had a task you kept putting off. A difficult email, a pile of laundry, a form you needed to fill out. You didn't avoid it because it was hard. You avoided it because the moment of beginning felt overwhelming. That feeling has a name in neuroscience. It's called task initiation resistance, and children feel it more intensely than adults do because their prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that manages planning and self-regulation, is still being built. So when a child sits down to do homework and suddenly needs a snack, needs the bathroom, needs to tell you something very important about what happened at school today, they're not being difficult. Their brain is doing exactly what brains do when starting feels too big. The 5-minute rule solves this at the root. Here's how it works. When a task feels difficult or boring, the child is encouraged to do just one thing. Start for 5 minutes, study for 5 minutes, clean for 5 minutes, practice piano for 5 minutes, read for 5 minutes. That's it. No pressure beyond that. No expectation of finishing. Just 5 minutes of beginning. And here's what happens next. Almost every time, the child continues. Because the hardest part of any task is never the middle, it's never the end. It's always the start. Once the brain is in motion, momentum takes over. Resistance drops. Focus builds naturally. The child who couldn't sit down for 30 seconds is suddenly 20 minutes deep into their homework without realizing it. This is not a trick. This is neuroscience. Researchers call it the Zeigarnik effect. The brain has a natural drive to complete things it has already started. Once you begin, your mind actually wants to finish. The 5-minute rule is simply a way of getting the brain past the only barrier that ever really existed, the beginning. Now, here's where Kaizen comes in, and this is the part that changes everything. Kaizen is a Japanese word that means continuous improvement through small, consistent actions. It was the philosophy that powered Japan's economic recovery after the war. Not dramatic transformation, not overnight change, just 1% better every single day, without stopping. Toyota used Kaizen to become one of the most efficient manufacturers on Earth. Japanese surgeons used it to reduce operating errors, and Japanese parents use it to raise children who don't need to be pushed. Because Kaizen teaches something that most Western parenting misses entirely. Motivation is not the starting point. Action is. We tell children, try harder. We tell them, you need to focus. We wait for them to feel ready, feel motivated, feel inspired. But Kaizen says the opposite. You don't wait to feel ready, you start small, and the feeling follows the action. 5 minutes of starting creates momentum. Momentum creates focus. Focus creates a small win. And small wins do something extraordinary to a child's brain. They build confidence, real confidence, not the kind that comes from being told, "Great job," every 5 minutes. The kind that comes from actually doing something hard and discovering you could. That confidence compounds. Every completed session, no matter how short, tells the child's brain a new story about who they are. I am someone who starts. I am someone who finishes. I am someone who can do hard things. And identity, once formed, drives behavior more powerfully than any rule ever could. Japanese schools understand this deeply. In many Japanese classrooms, children don't just study, they clean their own classrooms every day. They organize their materials before every lesson. They review what they learned the day before every single morning without being asked. Not because they're forced to, because repetition has made it part of who they are. The goal is never perfection. The goal is never a single dramatic achievement. The goal is steady, quiet, daily improvement. Kaizen, one small action repeated without stopping until it becomes identity. And here's the most important thing about the 5-minute rule that nobody talks about. Even if the child stops after 5 minutes, it still counts. Even 5 minutes of starting is 5 minutes of building the habit of beginning. Over weeks, those 5-minute sessions grow, not because you pushed, because the brain learned that starting is safe, that beginning doesn't have to be overwhelming, that focus is not a talent you're born with, it's a skill you build, 5 minutes at a time. Now, I want to be honest with you about something. The 5-minute rule only works if you believe it. If you say, just 5 minutes, but your body language says, I expect you to do an hour, your child will feel that. Children are extraordinarily good at reading the gap between what we say and what we mean. So when you offer 5 minutes, mean it. Sit nearby, stay calm, let them stop if they need to. Because the goal of the first week is not productivity. The goal is trust. Trust that starting is safe. Trust that you won't move the goalposts. Trust that 5 minutes really is enough. Once that trust is built, the child starts choosing to continue on their own, not because you pushed, because they discovered that starting feels better than avoiding. And that discovery, made by the child themselves, is worth more than any homework schedule you could ever design. Because here's what Kaizen really teaches at its deepest level. Change does not come from pressure. It comes from repetition. Small, safe, daily repetition until the new behavior stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like identity. So here's what I want you to try this week. Pick one task your child avoids. Homework, reading, tidying their room, and say these exact words. You only need to do 5 minutes. That's it. No pressure beyond that. No expectation of more. Just 5 minutes. Watch what happens. Because Japanese children are not magically more focused than children anywhere else in the world. They are simply taught from very early on that focus is not a feeling you wait for. It's a decision you make. A small one. Every single day. Kaizen. 5 minutes. Begin. That's the whole secret. If this video shifted something for you, even just one idea, share it with another parent, because the parents who need this most are often the ones who never go looking for it. And if you want to keep going deeper into the hidden habits behind how Japan raises focused, calm, and emotionally resilient kids, subscribe. Every week, we go further into the real science of child development. There's a lot more coming. I'll see you in the next one.